Good morning, everyone. My name is Timmy V, Secretary of the Colorado Springs Mutual Aid and Solidarity Union, and I am here to provide you with a news summary for the day. Local feline insurgents in my apartment report delays of food shipments lasting up to several hours, which is days in cat time. Peaceful protests, including demonstrations at the foot of my bed and vandalism of key state infrastructure, have resulted in a tense atmosphere between the ruling party and the oppressed, huddled masses. The ruling party, who is non-democratically elected and rules largely by fiat, released a statement saying that the kitty is a good kitty and that they will be up in one moment. This proved to be a lie, since it took, in fact, several moments for them to get up and to provide the kitty with food. In other news, Colorado Springs Mutual Aid and Solidarity Union Book Club met last night. I know that's like, whoever's listening to this from outside of COSP is like, why do I care? But like, if you want to join, you can, is all I'm saying. Like, we are on this chapter about agricultural modernization and collectivization in the Soviet Union. It touches on a lot of really good material about agriculture around the world. If you're interested, it's Seeing Like a State by James Scott. If you're listening to this because you're like a libertarian trying to figure out if we're Antifa or whatever, like, I would actually recommend that you check it out, especially if you're a libertarian, because I was like a hardcore right libertarian capitalist for a while, and Seeing Like a State definitely like kind of set me more towards the like left libertarian orientation way back. So highly recommend that book. I'm also, I should note, recording this for the second time. And the first time I recorded this, I was very grumpy because there was a lot of news that made me really angry. And I got editorial. And so the iPad crashed, and I think it was God telling me that I had let out all the anger that I needed to, and now I just needed to get to the point because I have international news to cover, and I have national news to cover, and I have local news to cover, and I just need to get my shit together. So that's what this is. This is second take of this news broadcast, and we're going to do it. If you want to give clothes, winter supplies, or food to Colorado Springs Mutual Aid and Solidarity Union, please go to America the Beautiful Park tomorrow, Thursday, from 5 to 7 p.m. Stop by, say hi, get to know folks, get to know people. You know, very nice people. We love meeting new people. We're welcoming. We're largely just like a bunch of like neurodivergent and trans folks and working class people who just want to see our community become a better place. That's fundamentally what we're about. We're not about, like trying to launch some kind of shadow insurrection or anything. Like, we are trying to build from the ground up a grassroots network of autonomous systems and unions and to support local economic empowerment. So that's what it's about. Come check us out. All right. So, yeah. Okay. Fox 21 News is teaming up with the Citizens Project, the League of Women Voters of the Pikes Peak region, and the Colorado Springs Independent to host city council candidate forums for each available district seat in Colorado Springs. They're running from March 3rd to the 11th. The first one is today with Richard Scorman and others from District 1. That'll be from 1 to 2 p.m. I highly recommend that people who are not members of the Chamber of Commerce or of the traditional political cliques to attend, to make clear the issues that matter to you, because it is important that ordinary people make their voices heard at these kinds of events. Otherwise, all the city council hears is the sort of like petty bourgeoisie concerns of like moderates who will like wet their pants if somebody builds affordable housing near them, within like a 2-mile radius of them. So yeah, I'm kind of salty today. I'm actually resting my iPad on a container of salt, and I think that might be contributing to my saltiness, but goddamn, high sodium warning today. High sodium warning. There is rain, snow, and thunder heading to Colorado Springs on Thursday. It's moving east from California, like so many people. It is moving east from California, and it is going to invade our state. It is going to bring degeneration, and it is going to scare your cats, and it is going to just cause so much traffic, probably. God damn it. Weather will vary through the state. So actually, to be clear, like if it's heading east from California, it will be broken up on the western slope, and it'll have to pass over all that. So Colorado Springs is probably not going to see that much, but it may be kind of erratic because I don't know what other storm systems are going on there. I could do a whole thing later about how to tell the weather in Colorado Springs because I took a meteorology class that was really great and I got really into it. I'll do it someday. More Colorado news. I'm rambling again. More Colorado news. Elevated levels of perfluoroalkyl chemicals, which are extremely chemically stable. I'm not going to get into the exact reasons why, which I did in my previous draft and it took too long. They do not break down, though, which causes bioaccumulation. The biosphere is not capable yet of filtering them out. It could become capable in like a few million years of evolution, but like that could also come at the heels of an extinction event that could wipe out like all life on Earth. So can't be broken down yet by like, anything that we know of. So and two of them are known by the EPA to cause cancer and birth defects and thyroid hormone disruption. It has a lot to do with just their chemistry and the way that they interact with other atoms and molecules in the body. The EPA recommends that drinking water contain no more than 70 parts per trillion, but other states have suggested a lower threshold. So like Michigan has suggested a very low threshold of like 7 parts per million or something like that. Massachusetts has set a limit at 20 parts per trillion. Sorry, not million, trillion. In Arapahoe County, tests found that water contained 23 parts per trillion, and in Frisco, the water contained 58.3 parts per trillion. I did not see a test for Colorado Springs, but a lot of areas around Denver, the fact that it's up in Frisco means that it's near the Dillon Reservoir, which provides a lot of water for Denver. Colorado in general, if we have elevated levels of PFAS, that's significant because we are the watershed for the Arkansas, for the Platte, for the Colorado, which provides irrigation for most of the United States' agriculture. So like the whole breadbasket in the Great Plains, we provide irrigation water for the whole like ranching and farming industry in like the American West. We provide water for, with the exception of like a few water projects, in like in California and Northwest areas, but significant amount of water comes from Colorado. So if we are polluting, it has downstream effects and it's very dangerous. So we have taken action to try to weed out those PFAS. What the next step needs to be is holding the corporations accountable that actually have been covering up the PFAS issues and dumping PFAS compounds unsafely, letting them get into the environment, letting them bioaccumulate. They need to face consequences for their role in that. Colorado Democrats have unveiled a plan for a public health care option. It is weak as F. It would give insurance companies 2 years to lower premiums by 20% in the individual group market, and then take effect in 2025 if they can't do that. So if you're having trouble getting insulin or paying for surgery, don't worry. You should maybe have health care by 2025. And now if you're sitting at home and thinking, well, that sounds like something that I sure hope the American insurance lobby is fighting tooth and nail to prevent because it sounds like communism. Well, you're in luck because Partnership for America's Healthcare Future, a nonprofit largely staffed by, or whose members are largely just other industry organizations. So it's a nonprofit, like corporate political action committee, basically. It's funded by Blue Cross Blue Shield, by HCA Healthcare, by LifePoint Health, multiple chambers of commerce, including in Colorado, in Iowa, in Michigan, in Texas, and manufacturing organizations and auto dealership organizations across the country. So like those are associations of business owners. They're essentially like the capitalist class showing their solidarity, and how organized they are. They're organizing like hell against this public option, and it's already weak as fuck. They're going to try to water it down. You need to call your legislator and like tell them that the like option is like a not even a compromise. It's like not even, it's shit. It like doesn't get people who need healthcare until 2025. It's bullshit. It's bullshit, especially in a pandemic. We abandoned trying to do healthcare last year. We abandoned trying to do this public health option at the start of the pandemic in May, or like kind of mid start of the pandemic in May. Man, I don't even know if that's the start or if it's like just the first wave or like what. But yeah, they're launching $1 million ad buy in Grand Junction, Colorado Springs, and Denver, and it has not even been introduced into committee yet. It's just like the text has been proposed. They spent $4.8 million in advertising and consulting last year, and $236,000 in direct lobbying. So that the organization Partnership for America's Healthcare Future, you can find their phone number if you want to leave them annoying messages. I'm sure you can do that yourself. I don't recommend you do that, but go ahead. So a group of Democratic state lawmakers, mainly Black and Latino women, have started pushing for a set of legislative reforms to strengthen tenants' rights in the long term. I did think this was good news. This includes extending an eviction moratorium to 2022, limiting late fees and penalties for breaking leases, changes to eviction court processes that give tenants more time and flexibility. However, the tenant-landlord relationship is an antiquated institution inherited from medieval feudalism, and it really should not exist anymore. We should provide housing as a human right. It should not be a commodity. There's enough empty office space and empty apartment units that should be pretty easy to do if we were willing to put the effort into doing it. But what you can do locally right now in Colorado Springs, if you haven't already, is join and support the Colorado Springs Tenants Union. They are organizing tenants at Dunmire properties. They will expand to other apartment complexes. You can get in touch with them if you want to start your own tenants union at your apartment complex. If you're tired of your landlords giving you shit, they're part of ATUN, the Autonomous Tenant Union Network, which I think is what it stands for. And great organization. I know the folks who run it. They're really good folks. So that's that. This also got my goat. This is about where I stopped last time. So I've cut 3 minutes off my time this time, which is good, considering that I am a rambly mess. All representatives from Colorado, not just Boebert, not just like Doug Lamborn, all of them, voted against an amendment to H.R. 1 that would allow prisoners to vote. Every single one of them, I say in my thing, needs to face an independent socialist challenger. I've talked about that before. The DSA has talked about that before locally. Socialists and leftists in Colorado really need to stop pretending they can work with the Democratic Party and start running left campaigns. That's my opinion, because I think I can sense already the Democratic Party is so wedded to this corporate neoliberal center-right politics that they're essentially just a corporatist capitalist option for the counterpoint to the social Darwinist capitalist option that's more represented by the Republicans. And we need a socialist option. We need organized socialist opposition, or we are not going to be able to effectively bring people in. People are going to be pushed to the right. People are going to be pushed out of the political system. We need socialists that are willing to run. Even if you don't win, if you're a socialist, think about it. Think about running not as a Democrat, just run as a socialist, as an independent socialist, okay? Do it. Do it now. In other news, union workers rallied in I keep saying in other news. I need to find a better transition because some of these just don't transition. They're just news items. Union workers rallied in Denver to pressure John Hickenlooper to back a $15 an hour minimum wage and immigration reform bill. He does need the pressure because he is determined to legislate as a moderate. He's already voted against allowing undocumented immigrants to receive stimulus money. It was largely a symbolic, redundant vote, mainly meant to target immigrants. It's kind of a dog whistle thing that didn't actually do anything beyond make racists feel slightly more relevant. So yeah, he also was censured by his own party for that. So he needs the pressure. He is walking on thin ice with his party, which is saying something considering the bare minimum one needs to satisfy liberal Democrats. I wrote this last night as I was laying in bed. It was 3 a.m. I was grouchy, very grouchy. I had been painting with oil pastels. I should not have bought the Sennelier oil pastels because they're too nice. I said in the last video, and I want to say it again, they are like spreading butter on toast. Could not recommend well enough. Oh my God. I cannot balance my need to buy ammunition and enjoy the benefits of legal gun ownership and my need to buy hundreds of oil pastels from Sennelier. I'm gonna be in debt. I shouldn't have started painting. Okay, and in news that's out of Colorado but local to here, one of my friends called me yesterday and wanted to talk about this because it was really freaking him out. Texas just lifted their mask mandate and said businesses can open 100% yesterday. No planning, no guidance, nothing. Mississippi did the same thing. And this is after the snowstorm decimated the state's economy. So yeah, businesses are shut down and struggling a lot. There's been a lot of local restaurants, local venues here in Austin that have closed. That's serious. But we shouldn't be in this situation where we're forced to choose between people, local working people being able to continue to live fulfilling lives and combating a pandemic. And if we had at least socialism, it would be a lot easier to get through this. You can see in Vietnam and Cuba, they've done pretty well on this. So yeah, it's very in line with this capitalist social Darwinist ideology. And I think I kind of correlate this with CPAC, because at CPAC you had Kristi Noem go up there and her whole speech was just our state didn't lock down and look how great we did. Don't pay any attention to Sturgis. We did great. And Ron DeSantis was there and he was second to Trump in the straw poll, and he was bragging about how Florida didn't do lockdowns. And so it's clear that the Republican Party is going to make this a huge issue, that, our Governor Abbott in Texas kind of maybe feels pressure from the Republican base and from the potential of a primary challenge to just get in line and to lift the lockdowns. And that way he can, be the conservative hero of the day. But it doesn't have to do with actual safety. And the thing is a lot of businesses don't feel comfortable. A lot of people don't feel comfortable going into businesses right now without a mask on. So businesses are still going to require masks. And so what this is going to lead to is, unfortunately, a significant increase in the number of videos of angry white ladies verbally abusing customer service people. Just wait for it. Just wait for it. There's going to be someone having a meltdown in HEB within 2 weeks. It's going to be hilarious and it's going to be terrible. And you're going to feel bad because you're enjoying it. And you're going to enjoy it too much. And you're going to stop wanting a revolution. Because it's going to be an opiate. So that's the risk. Although, I got into my stand-up comedy phase because I'm covering up most of my face with my phone, so I'm not as self-conscious when I'm doing this. All right. A major wave. So this is coming after the snowstorm, right? So, but also there is a huge wave in Texas that's just now stabilizing, and I'm worried that it's going to set us back even further, because, yeah, okay. A lot of people though over 65 have been vaccinated, So that's one thing, but they aren't the only ones who get sick. Like, people my age get sick and die. Like, I don't want to get COVID. Like, it does kind of suck that everything's closed down, but there's stuff you can do that they're just unwilling to do because it threatens capitalism. Anyway, yesterday I thought it was hilarious and kind of sad and telling that the Dr. Seuss news story was like just everywhere in right-wing news. Like, every time I turned on Fox, because I turn it on, I go between MSNBC, Fox, CNN, and Al Jazeera. I just go back and forth all day. It was on every single channel. Like, they just had to mention it. They brought on a professor to debate with a civil rights lawyer who just shouted the professor down and like demanded that he name one person who's been negatively impacted by the images in Dr. Seuss's book. I mean, this is from the party that believes in the free market, and it's like a private publisher deciding to like not print and sell a book. Like, it's not like the book is burned, but whatever. I think, though, that what makes this worth talking about, because personally, like, this cancel culture, talking about cancel culture does not sound like news to me. And I want to do news broadcasts for you all that give you useful, relevant news about world events and structural issues, and gossip about what Dr. Seuss books are being printed and which ones are not does not do it for me. But why I think that this matters is that now this backlash is now fueling this culture war stuff, and what we need to be prepared for is that is being used to distract from class antagonism in the backdrop of this pandemic, in the backdrop of these kind of neoliberal reformist attempts and this gridlock in the state house. Like, people are talking about Dr. Seuss and ignoring everything else that's going on in the world. And so anytime you hear about cancel culture, just ask people, why the heck does it matter what Dr. Seuss books are? Like, why does it matter? Isn't there bigger stuff going on right now? Like, talk about real issues. Sorry. Like, it's just the fakest, corniest populism, and it needs to be called out. All right, let's keep going. The Ain al-Assad base in Iraq was hit with missiles, and that came after an airstrike in Syria failed to de-escalate the situation, surprisingly. 13 rockets were launched, according to Al Jazeera. The U.S. officials reported 10 impacts. There were no deaths or significant losses reported. This base houses U.S. drones that are used to conduct surveillance in the area. There's been a recent increase in violence in Iraq, and what Al Jazeera was speculating was that it has to, actually two news sources were speculating that it has to do with the Pope, who is planning to visit Iraq in 2 days. It'll be the first papal visit to Iraq, and this is despite a seeming escalation of violence even in the Green Zone. So, hope the Pope Mobile is ready. Secretary of State Anthony Blinken met with Juan Guaido, calling him the interim president of Venezuela, although he has never received a single vote to be president, and he's no longer a member of the National Assembly. This is like if our union, for instance, put out a statement recognizing the corpse as Murray Bookchin as the interim president of the United States, only it's just a little bit more preposterous. Maybe we will put that on our ballot next time. Murray Bookchin corpse for president. China's Sharp Eyes program encourages... Oh, so this was scary. China's unveiling this Sharp Eyes program, right? It encourages people to watch CCTV footage and report crimes to the police, aiming to surveil 100% of public space. We have a similar surveillance state in the US. It's only growing more pervasive. Michel Foucault in Discipline and Punish, great book that I had to read for class today, argues that this is the dominant mode of state power and control in the context of modernity, is making people feel watched. So that takes the place of like the spectacular public ritual of punishment and turns it into this confined space of punishment where you're constantly being watched and surveilled and monitored. It's getting the thing that is scary about this, and I can see this kind of stuff happening in the U.S., which is why I feel like it's just evidence of the evils of like industrial state capitalism, period. It's getting neighbors to buy into it, and it's like, it's really similar to our if you see something, say something thing. It, saying this is kind of unique to China ignores the fact that in the US, if you're a black person, you're constantly surveilled in public space. You feel constantly surveilled in public space. You'll have random strangers call the cops on you because they think you're doing the wrong thing or you're in the wrong place. So yeah. Moving to Brazil. Brazil is, I'm going to see if I can interview one of my friends from Brazil, by the way, because I'd really like to talk to her and hear about her perspective on this. But Brazil is seeing record deaths from COVID. A few days ago, they did pass the 250,000 mark. The New York Times is reporting that, and I'll just quote directly from them, preliminary studies suggest the variant that swept through the city of Manaus, which is in Amazonia, it is not only more contagious, but it also appears to infect some people who have already recovered from other versions of the virus. And the variant has slipped past Brazil's borders. It showed up in 24 other countries and in small numbers in the United States. Brazil's economy has contracted 4.1%. They are no longer in the world's top 10 economies, which is very sad for Brazil. The real, which is Brazil's currency, is trading at 6-1 practically to the United States. Normally when I go down there, it's like 3-1. So it's depreciated significantly. Members of academia there are being who criticize the government or even just encourage protests or encourage participation in protests are facing accusations of, quote, administrative immorality and being pressured to resign. The Supreme Court's found that unconstitutional, but Bolsonaro has a lot of right-wing allies who are concerned, and this goes back to the military dictatorship, which Bolsonaro is a huge fan of, with this idea of moral subversion in Brazil. So, bad and sad. BuzzFeed News is reporting that despite the DHS knowing that migrants likely face danger if deported back to Haiti, the U.S. has been continuing to deport Haitian migrants. And that does follow that Texas judge's decision to prevent the Biden administration from stopping deportations. So a lot of this has to do with stuff that's already in place that is just really hard to uproot. Asylum seekers were not given the opportunity to present their claims under Trump. And it's a violation of human rights law that was going on, and everyone knew about it during the Trump presidency. The Trump administration had actively sought to push for evidence of crimes committed by Haitian migrants to limit their asylum claims. And so I wonder why Haiti, and I'll tell you why, because I won't pause too much on that. Haiti is a majority black country. It was founded by the world's most successful slave rebellion in history, and we've done a lot to fuck with Haiti. Dominican Republic also announced they're building a border wall with Haiti, a border fence. I'm not sure how they're going to fence off the ocean on the other sides of the island, or like how they're going to deal with the fact that there's like all these communities along the border that are like have been going back and forth because the border between Haiti and Dominican Republic is mountains, is a lot of mountains and like rural areas where a lot of fugitive slaves went back when slavery was still legal there, where a lot of Indians went to escape Spanish colonialism. And so it's got a lot of communities that have lived along the border without necessarily state contact. So that's just a bad sign in general. And it's not going to work. It's just like those kinds of things don't work. Ex-Marine Jacques Dorisseau, he's from Haiti. He had watched the U.S. military roll through his neighborhood in Haiti when he was 9 years old and was inspired to join the Marines. He was sentenced to 5 years in prison for attempting to export guns from Florida to Haiti. He had planned to go back to train people. One source said in order to overthrow the government. One source said in order to support his army in like foreign wars. He lost his cool with a customs officer at the airport. And at his trial, he quoted a speech by Haile Selassie, cited in Bob Marley's song War, and then said, quote, "I see positivity even in the shadow of darkness. I fight for the poor man, the ones that don't have any voice." He suffered a traumatic brain injury in Afghanistan, which his defense pointed to defend his actions. He was still sentenced, though, to 5 years in prison. In other news, this also stood out to me, Green Left reporting on Haiti. President Moise, who I mentioned yesterday, has been clinging to power, has been ruling by fiat. apparently since January is when it really started. He invested himself with full powers of judiciary and legislature. He gave the local bourgeoisie as a gift, this is a quote from Green Left, much of the country's agricultural land reserves, some 8,600 hectares of fertile land in the Artibonite and Central Plateau departments. In a country where nearly 40% of the population suffers from food shortages, this large expanse of land is now to be used to produce stevia as a sweetener for the multinational Coca-Cola. To put the operation in motion, the Moise government granted the Apaid family, with whom Coca-Cola has a contract, $18 million. So F Coca-Cola, F Moise, solidarity with the protesters in Haiti. Okay, next. This one was sent into the Discord, and I thought this was a really interesting piece of news that points to more of the Trump corruption that happened that we're now kind of just starting to learn more about. So 2 whistleblowers showed that an Israeli businessman, this was a little bit back, named Dan Gessler set up a money laundering network to evade U.S. sanctions and pursue mining interests in the Democratic Republic of the Congo. And they just revealed their identities. They're Navy Malela and Grady Koko, who worked for the audit department of Afroland Bank. It's a Cameroonian bank, but it has a branch in Kinshasa, which is the capital of DRC. You're learning about African geography whether you like it or not by listening to this news broadcast. That's what I'm here for. Trump reportedly exempted Gessler from sanctions, granted him a special license through the Treasury Department until 2022, saying that the U.S. had a national security interest in his mining operations. Gessler had corrupt connections to former President Kabila, resulting in 2 whistleblowers receiving death threats. According to the Treasury Department press release, between 2010 and 2012 alone, the DRC reportedly lost over $1.36 billion in revenues from the underpricing of mining assets that were sold to offshore companies linked to Gessler. Is it Gessler? No, it's Gertler. You know what? He doesn't deserve for me to pronounce his goddamn name correctly. Fuck that guy. But yeah, the DRC has had a long history of this, and I won't go too far into it, but President Mobutu, who was installed after the U.S. and the Belgians overthrew the Prime Minister Lumumba at the start of Congolese independence, Mobutu embezzled billions of dollars from the Congo and took them into offshore bank accounts, fled with them after he was deposed, never made it back to the Congo, and now the Congo is dealing with massive debt with neo-colonialist interventions from the World Bank, which always come with requirements for austerity that harm the working class and help multinational corporate interests. And clearly, Trump was interested in supporting it because he thought that there was a national security interest in it. So, yeah. The web of corruption runs deep, and it runs through all the countries. Reuters reports, and this is the last bit of item of news. I thought this was really interesting, and I did copy a lot of stuff down about this. So, last item, though. Reuters is reporting that as Greenland's ice sheet and glaciers recede, 2 Australia-based mining companies, one seeking funding in the United States, the other part owned by a Chinese state-backed firm, are racing for approval to dig into what the U.S. Geological Survey calls the world's biggest undeveloped deposits of rare earth minerals, end quote. One of these projects, a uranium mine that would export material directly to China, would involve the production of radioactive waste, which local indigenous people have voiced concern about allowing. Marianne Paviasin, a lawmaker from Narsok, said, "As indigenous people, we have lived in harmony with nature for many, many years. We use these lands to hunt and fish," end quote. Yet this mining project alone would produce revenue equal to 15% of the country's national expenditures, and the government is very reluctant to turn it down. This is Denmark. Greenland is a colony of Denmark, by the way. The finance minister was quoted as saying that the project was not allowed to go forward. Quote, this just made me cringe, and I'm just cringing thinking about reading it. "We'll make a fool of investors. The credibility of the whole country is at stake," end quote. Ugh. Just really gotta lick those boots, huh? Okay. The mother mining project, about 10 miles away, would focus on yttrium and lanthanum, 2 metals used in automobiles, lasers, quantum computing, and telescopes. Waste would be dumped into a nearby lake, which would be dammed up in hopes of preventing leakage. Final processing of the metals would need to occur in either Malaysia or China, so they would be shipped there after being crushed and into concentrated ore for processing. Evidently, word of this mining operation, which happened when the head of the company met with Trump, prompted ex-President Trump to make an offer to buy Greenland altogether last year. So that's interesting, is he heard, oh, there's metals there, there's precious metals, let's buy it. And like, oh, Gertler, you wanna support conflict minerals in the Congo and steal money from a third world country? Sure, I'll let you do that. I'll get around those sanctions. Those sanctions are fake news. Those sanctions are fake news. The UN Human Rights Commission is liberal elites. No, it's more like they think it's like China, because they pulled out of the human rights thing. You see how grizzled I am today? I'm just grouchy. And you know what I'm gonna do to cheer myself up? Fucking organize. I'm gonna try to be helpful and make myself useful, as Pete Buttigieg would say, who, despite being a neoliberal shell, is still like, I still have a soft spot in my heart for him. And I know that will get me canceled, but it's true. And so with that said, here is the Soviet national anthem, accompanied by memes provided by the hard workers of the Colorado Springs Mutual Aid and Solidarity Union.